when we fire Matt Rhule in 2 years, I think that you will look back and this will be the game that you should look back and say, well, it was pretty clear he wasn't going to be able to make it. Nebraska loses 37-10 to Penn State in a road night game that I don't know if it was even that close. Really disappointing after, coming in with a 7-3 record. And I felt like Matt Rhule had built up some goodwill. But that all got pooped down the toilet, didn't it? And you kind of probably guessed where I'd be for this game. This was just terrible all around. If you watch the preview I did before this, during the week, I talked about one thing I didn't want to see, and that was the offense walk around. I know everybody's going to go insane about the defense, and they probably should. But the offense still continues to bother me. I talked about it during the preview, how I didn't want to see an offense that would just walk around the field and try to get into a slug fight with Penn State. And that's kind of pretty much what we saw. We waited until we were down 27 points before we opened up on the offense a little bit in the second half and, went out and scored a touchdown. Otherwise, I think we played right into Penn State's hand. We had a good opening drive. We just didn't finish it. I have no idea whatsoever why you bring Heinrich Haarberg into the game and have him play quarterback to just hand the ball off. What do you do? What is that supposed to be? Like trickeration? Because, if you're going to bring first of all, Heinrich Haarberg's career has been wasted on really crappy coaches. I'm not talking about Matt Rhule, the previous regime of coaches. But if you're going to bring him into the game, do something with a wildcat, do something with an option, do something with a pop pass or a jump pass. You do the same crap. And then your short yardage plays with him are just shit. And that's what we got again when we really needed to score on that drive. And it probably would have been a different game if we'd have scored on that drive because Nebraska really kind of lost control of themselves for the rest of the second half after Penn State went up by 10. You saw it kind of in the lack of discipline. You saw him, getting pretty chippy, and you don't need to be doing that on the road because when you do that on the road, you play right into the home team's hands, where they're going to always get the calls at home. They're going to get the crowd on their side at home. Toward the end of the half, if you don't get what I'm talking about with the offense, toward the end of the half, when we really kind of, Penn State's ahead, and they're going to get the ball in the second half and basically, get the chance to score 14 points in a row. And we have, I don't know, what was there, a minute left? What do we do? Same thing I complained about before. We walk out on the field, we don't get calls in, or we're plodding around, we're wasting time getting lined up. We don't have a plan. We look like we don't know what we're doing. And we're running the ball and throwing short passes when we need to move like 60 yards down the field. There's no sense of urgency there whatsoever. Breath, breathe. If Matt Rhule doesn't want to get fired in the next 2 years, here's exactly what I think he needs to do. First of all, he needs to get a different offensive line coach. I said in the preview that Penn State's defensive line would make our tackles look like they did against Michigan. That was a little different because TJ Lateef can get the ball out faster and can do different things like take off and run like he did when he scored his touchdown. But Penn State did that a couple times where they just made our tackles look stupid. Why? Because our offensive line isn't very good. Obviously, our defensive line isn't very good either. Do I think John Butler can be a good defensive coordinator? I still have hope with him, but he doesn't have the guys up front. So unless Nebraska can put weight on the guys that we have and get them up to 300, 315 pounds, you're going to see the same shit again next year. And, unless Matt Rhule makes a change at his offensive line coaching position, you're going to see the same shit again next year. It's just going to be the same thing. They ran stunts on us. We can't pick up stunts. We haven't been able to pick up stunts for years now. Dana Holgerson, I would put the odds that Dana Holgerson being our offensive coordinator at about 20 to 25% next year. Because we're not running Dana Holgerson's offense. We're running whatever shit offense Matt Rhule thinks we should be running. And you can see it. It's not built to score points. It's built to plod around the field and score maybe 24 to 28 points a game. I've talked about that. It's not enough. It's not enough to get over the big hump. Maybe you're going to, when you look at the season, you look at Minnesota, they got beat up today. You look back on that game and go, God, that's the one game that we really shouldn't have lost. It would have been 8-2. And it kind of would have been, a nice 8-2, but it kind of would have been fraudulent too. Because it's clear, looking at Penn State, I don't care what their record is. They have players. You know what they have? They have offensive linemen and defensive linemen, and that's what won them this game. There was no secret coming into this game. Got to breathe again. There was no secret coming into this game they were going to run the ball at us. And we knew they were going to run the ball. They knew they were going to run the ball. And then they ran the ball, and they ran it down our throats. They ran it with conviction. Why? Because they have offensive linemen. We don't have defensive linemen to stop that stuff. So that's a big change that has to happen next year. Rather than going out into the portal and getting 28 defensive backs and 32 receivers, they got to get a lineman on both sides of the ball. Or they have to figure out how to develop them. And that's not happening with this staff. And that's probably the biggest reason why I'd look at and say, we need a different offensive line staff. Because we play Iowa Friday. And when you look at Iowa, I hate Iowa, but they do a lot of things well. One of the things they do is they take guys that nobody knows about, or the offensive linemen that aren't $50 billion offensive linemen. I need more money. That's my impression of Matt Rhule. They take offensive linemen that people really aren't big star guys, and they put them into the NFL. They develop them. That's what that's called, making them better, development. And we do not do any of that. We're not doing any of that. In Slack, Todd makes this comment that, Iowa has 3 guys that they say will be playing on Sunday. And Fred responds, well, all our guys will be playing on Sunday. They'll be playing Xbox or PlayStation. Boom, ching. That's my effort at levity. It is probably a little bit harsh. There's a reaction, but this is a toilet game. The game Nebraska went into. I also talked in the preview about this becoming a snowball game, and that's exactly what happened in the first half. A snowball game, again, the snow starts as a little snowball on top of the mountain, rolls down the mountain, this big boulder causing an ambulance, wipes out the village. That's what happened in the first half. Everything got away from Nebraska. Maybe because of that first drive, maybe because they lost confidence. Because I'll tell you this, if you don't have confidence in your coaching, you play a lot worse than you really are. And Nebraska, especially in the first half, looked like they lost a lot of confidence in their coaching. Now, if we take the calm perspective to this, we came into this game with a very young quarterback making like his second start. And he kind of played like that. Toward the end of the game, the ball sailed on him quite a bit. But I am just absolutely astonished at how conservative this offense is, and how there was 42 seconds left in this game, and we finally took a shot downfield, like a deep shot. Why they can't even... Okay, I get it. Your offensive line can't block well, so you can't take the time for your receivers to get downfield so you can throw them the ball. You have a quarterback that can roll out, that can extend plays, and you still didn't bother taking any shots downfield. So how do you expect any defense to do anything but just stand up there and stop everything you're doing from 3 to 5, 7 yards? Because that's all the offense you're generating. I haven't even talked about the defense, and I don't even think it's worth talking about. Because we know what we have in a defense. We have a defense that can't stop the run. Are we going to have problems with Iowa? Yeah, we're going to have problems with Iowa. Are we going to lose? Well, traditionally, that's what we do. I shouldn't be laughing at that. But, Iowa's kind of a mess, too. So God knows what's going to happen in this game coming up. Could you salvage a lot by beating Iowa? Yes, you could, Matt Rhule. Is he going to get fired in 2 years? I started with that, and I'm going to stick with it, that unless he makes changes like some of the ones I stated, I think he's going to get fired in 2 years. The whole offense thing, I find it so flabbergasting. I also found it flabbergasting that you kept Emmett Johnson in the game real late when you're just beating him up more in a game that's already out of reach. And you need him to beat Iowa. One more thing I want to point out. Well, there's probably always one more because I'm like Columbo, On that fake punt, I'm getting old and blind, but what I saw was he snapped it to the up back. And what I saw was the center had slightly turned the ball so he could snap it direct, instead of just, he had slightly turned the ball before he snapped it. If you're a defensive line, maybe somebody can go back and check that for me. I don't know. If you're a defensive lineman and you saw that, what would you be doing? You'd be either screaming or you'd be screaming, call timeout or something. But nobody did anything. The guy ran for 26 yards. And then I'm going to look up one thing. Penn State's Grunkmeyer, 11 and 12 for 181 yards. He missed one throw. That's it. TJ Lateef was 21 of 37 for 187 yards. Not great. You got into a position where you had to throw the ball a lot. I'll let it go. This is going on. To beat Iowa, we're going to have to get Emmett Johnson going in the running game. I still don't think we can get into a slugfest with them and win. You know what? I'll save all that for their Iowa. I'll do an Iowa preview maybe. Disappointing loss. Like a tragic loss, a horrifying loss, an embarrassing loss on national TV. I guess they're all on national TV, but it's a night game. The people, Nebraska, Penn State, they wanted to chime in. And I'll leave the announcers alone. For God's sakes, Todd Blackledge.